Right, hello and welcome to the Happy Teacher Pod. Today we have a special guest because unfortunately Jenny was unable to make this podcast as she's very busy making 2 cakes for her child's birthday tomorrow. And as we're all about well-being and being a happy teacher, I thought it would be very unfair to force her away from her cake making in order to come on the podcast. So instead, I decided to bring on my husband and also teacher, Dan. Dan has been teaching for 2 years. No, I'm joking. How long have you been teaching for?
It's Dan? My 20th year.
So Dan has been teaching for 20 years. He doesn't stop harping on about the fact that he's been teaching for 20 years, by the way, just FYI. And not only that, I've been married to Dan for 10 years. We've been together for 12 years.
You have to think about that way too much.
And obviously we're both teachers, so we've both got interesting kind of stories into teaching, and obviously Dan's been teaching for 20 years, so he's got a lot of interesting views, opinions, stories, things to say. So let's pass over to Dan for the Break-time Banter. I actually don't know what story he's going to tell today, but he assures me it's going to be funny, so let's wait and see.
You know what? I wish I wrote all these down from the beginning when I started teaching, because whenever someone says, oh, kid's always going to say the funniest things, it's true, but when you put on the spot, you just can't think of one. So I'm going to have to go to quite a recent experience. So I teach PE, and our examinable course has got a lot of coursework in it.
Yeah.
A lot of typing up. And recently we was in computer lab doing typing. Now, I work at a school in East London. Kids in East London are going to be kids in East London. They're messing around with the keyboards, changing the keys around, all kinds, you know. So the typos are horrendous at the best times anyway. Add that in anyway. It just gets worse. The IT team, who are great, by the way, you've always got to make friends with the IT team. Forever changing mice, changing keyboards, etc.
Maybe we should ask you your top tips later on. But yeah, go on anyway, yeah.
Anyway, so I've got a completely male group this year. They're all kind of want to be lads. They're actually a really sweet group. They get on nicely together and stuff. So they're all sat there typing. This one lad who's a little bit meek than the others, gets on well with them, but a little bit quiet, isn't normally the one who's at the butt of the jokes or cracking them, but will kind of chirp in with a couple of astute observations. Clearly hasn't thought about what he said. He's typing, he's got a problem with his keyboard. In front of a whole cohort of year 10 boys who want to be alpha males, turns around and goes, oh, for God's sake, my D's not working.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Do you know what? If you're a secondary school teacher, you know exactly what that means. I bet there were roars of laughter in the classroom.
Well, it was that kind of line between, oh my God, I can't believe he's just said that, and come on, Dan, you've got to keep this professional. And I just happened to catch the eyes of one of the boys in there who's one of these kids who, like, if you met him in the workplace, you know you'd be able to kind of hang out with him, have a chat with him. He's really grown up at you. And his eye just caught mine. That was it. I was gone.
So
I was gone.
Yeah, no,
I tried my best, but no, there was no saving that.
Yeah, do you know what? Someone said something in class that I actually can't even remember what it was, and I burst out laughing the other day, and I was thinking, I mean, it's funny. It's fine. I think teachers can laugh at things. I think that one's a bit different though, because it's obviously got a sexual connotation to it. So they're probably thinking, oh, sir's like finding this funny.
No, but it's that line of professionalism between saying you shouldn't laugh. Like I remember once at the school where we met, I was on duty and 2 kids were having an argument, and I kind of tried jumping in to stop it. And this one kid, who's again she was a fairly quiet girl, just absolutely finished this girl who was giving her grief because this girl was on her, you're this, you're that, and she's absorbed it. And she turned around and went, for context, this girl had quite a big gap between her teeth. She went, yeah, but I don't need boat rope to floss. Again, I shouldn't have laughed, but how could I not?
Well, you know, I know. So Dan's got a bit of a thing about people with gaps between their teeth, so I can totally imagine that made you.
No, it was just the way that it was so coldly delivered by someone you'd never expect it from.
Yeah, I think when you get like kids with like proper like dry sense of humour, it's like that is really funny. So I wanted to speak to Dan today just about the beginning of his teaching career, and where he's at now and how he's come to this point, because Dan recently got a promotion to assistant head, which he's going to be starting in September. So I think, you've come a long way in 20 years and there's been a lot of stuff in between.
Yeah.
And you've definitely got a lot of advice to give. So do you want to start off with what led you into teaching?
I think I knew I was going to be a PE teacher at the age of 12. My PE teacher...
Unlike me, by the way, can I just say, I did not know I was going to go into teaching, and it was totally a fluke thing. But anyway, go on.
No, my PE teacher just inspired me to do it. The sport I played, rugby, at the time wasn't professional, so that wasn't really a pathway to explore, so I just kind of went along that route. Rugby did turn pro, kind of tried my hand at cracking that. Same old story of every PE teacher, injury stopping me,
Yes.
Not quite getting to where I wanted to be, but it was great. Unlike kind of kids who put all their eggs in the football basket, where it wasn't pro at the time, I always had that fallback, especially with my mum cracking the whip behind, going, no, you can follow that if you want, but you're getting your degree, you're getting educated. So as soon as the injuries kicked in, it went back to plan A. Let's get into teaching rather than professional sport. It's the next best thing I can do. Sport was so important for me growing up. I grew up in Newham, in the East End. Lots of potential things to go wrong living somewhere like that. And sport kept me on the straight and narrow. I was too tired to be mischievous, really. I was doing one club or the other, or this fixture or that fixture, pretty much every day of the week. So even if I'd wanted to be mischievous, I don't think I'd have been much good at it.
Yeah, it's like absolutely bled into how you are as a teacher. Like the way that you grew up and how you approached sport yourself and what you done as a kid, like how you teach now and how you connect with those kids that especially kind of want to go professional or whatever else. Is like, I don't know, like it's really, really difficult. So I've got a kid in my year group at the moment who is playing for a team like the under 16s team, and they give them a lot of promises, don't they? And we often talk about this, and I think Dan's always running a cautionary tale with the kids of, okay, that's fine. Like, you should have your aims, you should have your goals, and you should absolutely want to, make it into the professional world of sport. But, you should also have something that you can also rely on. Like, the fact that you wanted to be a teacher from when you were 12, what if you didn't kind of have that plan, and then when you were 21, when you weren't able to play professionally anymore, and you didn't have a degree, and you were relatively young when you couldn't play professionally anymore, so it would have been, I guess, the end of the world. But I think to have the foresight to do something else so that you were prepared just in case, you didn't want to ever kind of use that. You would have much preferred to play professional rugby for a living. We would have never met, but you would have, maybe we would have, you never know. Serendipity and all of that kind of stuff.
I mean, your deep-seated love of rugby, of course we would have.
Yes. I love rugby now.
Now? Yeah.
I didn't even know what rugby was when I met Dan, so and then I think, so how long were you teaching when we met each other? You'd been teaching 8 years by that point, because we've known each other 12 years.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So Dan had already been teaching for quite a while, but actually you were still just being a PE teacher. Or did you have any TLRs when I met you?
I can't remember if it was, I'd already got it before we met or during the time that we were together. No, it must have been before that. I was head of house.
Oh, yes. So Dan had a lot of pastoral roles as well when he was in the school that we met in. And then we met in 2012. Actually, we'd worked with each other already for a year previous to that, but we
had only spoken once.
Yeah, we hadn't spoken at all. We'd said hello to each other every morning. Oh. We always used to see each other in the car park in the morning.
More than the hello, it was me being, the supportive kind of elder statesman who'd been in the professional world to a young teacher who'd had a bad morning.
Yeah, I had a really bad day and I said I hate kids. So I wasn't very nice. But I ran into the staff room, like, I think I was crying as well. Like, it wasn't good.
I don't think you was crying. You
Or
seemed
maybe I was
frustrated.
very frustrated, yeah.
Um,
So the school that we met at was a very challenging school, although Dan will probably say it wasn't that challenging. But
I liked it.
my memory of it was extremely challenging. Maybe it was because I was an NQT at the time and just the area it was in, the types of kids that were there. It was really challenging. The behaviour was really rough. And also, I got given some mad timetable when I got there. Like, I got given 15 classes, 6 GCSE classes. Yeah, so it was a bit of an ouch moment. Like, I think in hindsight, it really made me like super organised and I had to kind of be on top of everything and know, but just having that many classes. But yeah, so we met in 2011, but we didn't actually start dating until 2012. And actually, no, we didn't let anybody know in the school until I was leaving the year after. So 2013, I left that school.
For the record, she did a hit and run there. She was happy for everyone to know because she was leaving. I was staying. It's like, yep, that's your deal. You get on with that.
Well, it wasn't exactly
So
a hit and run because we stayed together. Otherwise, then yeah,
hit,
it would be
hit and run in
classed as a
terms
hit
of the
and run.
school. It was like, oh yeah, I don't care who knows now because I'm not going to be the one dealing with that.
Yeah, so basically only maybe like a couple of people in my department, the humanities department, knew. And did your whole department know? Yeah,
Well,
I bet the whole department.
But do you not
did,
remember?
probably.
There was that weird cut through from the PE office to the
there was.
upstairs RE classroom.
So
for
I
some
used to have a
reason.
classroom that was in like a really weird part of the school. It was
Almost like its own little block.
Yeah, it was almost separate from the rest of the school. And then I was on the like second floor. So no one really ever came to my classroom, like ever.
There was no reason to go up there. There was
So
your classroom, the one next door.
basically, unless I sought out other teachers, like I never had that. So, but what happened was the PE block was next, or it was like attached to it, and there was like a little cut through. So basically, no one knew that we were dating because no one ever saw us together.
Well, there was that one time where we went to the O2 and a member of finance saw us.
On the train.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the time when your head of department
spotted us in Tesco when we just moved in with each other. But it wasn't, I think the reason why we tried to keep it quiet was because it's just that classic thing, isn't it? Of like, if the kids find out, it's just too much.
One kid did find out.
But kept it very quiet. I didn't tell anybody.
You wasn't convinced he was going to.
No, I wasn't. But yeah, so then we met we started dating in 2012, and then I left that school in 2013, and you actually continued on there for another couple of years, was it?
I don't think it was a couple. I would have left.
You were there for 10 years in total, I think.
I was just under 10 years. I was into my 10th year, but I left at the Christmas. So I left like 2 weeks after we got married.
So I think when I met Dan, I was literally like, why on earth are you not going for promotions? Like, what is going on here? Like, and I think it's because me as a teacher, I've always been very like career driven and wanting to kind of push on. Dan is very like, oh, I'm just happy where I am. Like, it's fine. That's fine. That is fine. And lots of people do it. And actually, you know what, again, lots of hindsight, I would have actually said, you know what, that's a perfect position to be in if you're happy in the school that you're in. Happy doing what you're doing, even if you are just kind of like, you know, plodding along almost and just doing it.
I mean, I think you're right to a degree. I probably did need a bit of a kick up the backside because I think we've seen since that I was not underutilising myself. I was doing plenty there, just not necessarily putting my hand up for roles and stuff. But
you always think
to the same degree, it's always been a bugbear of mine. I've seen it way too many times in a number of schools I've worked in, or kind of, especially in the PE teaching fraternity, you always know someone at another school and talk. These people who are kind of flying up the ranks and like head teachers in their 20s, and, you know, while some of them might be very good, there's also a number of them who haven't learnt their craft yet.
Yeah, but
so I think I was just not wanting to be that guy who all of a sudden's in this position that's overwhelming me, and I don't know what life's supposed to be about there because I've not learnt the ropes.
Yeah, so I kind of like done like the nudging and you went to a school that you absolutely hated for 2.5 years, or is it nearly 3 years?
It was just shy of 3. Yeah, it was the remainder of that year and then 2 more.
You know, it's Mental Health Awareness Week this week, and I think it's important to kind of bring this up because, like, it was a really really hard time for me and for you, because obviously, first of all, I was the one that kind of like pushed you to go to this new school, and then it was such a terrible experience that I felt extremely guilty, and I think I felt like you would be very resentful of me for that. And yeah,
I don't think resentful's right. I think it put in perspective just how much I enjoyed the atmosphere, the kind of school I was at, the team I was in, and all that thing.
Doesn't that make such a difference? Like,
oh, you know what? I was talking to someone about this, a young member of staff recently, because I was on the Duke of Edinburgh trip, and you know, in the evening you get talking to staff, and you know, I'm at that stage now where I've got plenty of experience. This year I've been associate assistant head teacher, so the younger staff, when they see an opportunity to try and glean a bit of information, a bit of wisdom, they do. And I was explaining, I was in the department, it was almost like a family, you know, we did loads of stuff together. We was all at the same kind of age. We was all at the same kind of point in life, just getting married, just having kids. Like, there was so much overlap. I think the age range between us, once my initial head department there retired and the new head of department came in, I think 4 years separated 5 members of staff from youngest to oldest. So we was like slap bang at that point of life together.
I think, so in a couple of weeks' time, we'll be releasing a podcast, me and Jenny, with our old department. So we're going to be talking about friendships and this idea that, you know, and you know how much I love...
You know exactly what I'm talking about, because you with that department where you met Jenny,
myself,
it was the same kind of thing. So to be yanked away from that is gut-wrenching. Actually, on my very first week at my new school, and it was a January start, I said I went at the Christmas... I got out the door at 3 p.m. sharp and went to my old school because I knew they was running clubs, and like left with them on Friday night.
Because you were obviously...
You know, I think the reality hit me that, oh, you know, you're not in Kansas anymore, Dorothy. This is not the same.
Yeah, and in that working environment makes the hugest difference to your mental health. Like, I cannot even say how huge that difference is.
Of course there's...
And I was even scared to leave my old school that I was at for 9 years, because although a lot of my department had left, there were still some people there that made it a really happy department, and I just didn't want to leave those friendships, because you actually never know if you're gonna... And obviously I'd seen what had happened with you, and I'm always really dubious about going to a new school, because you want to find your people, and it's just like that. Those people could be in lots of different, like, they might not necessarily be your department. Like in my current school, it's actually not my department. In fact, because we're a split site school, I actually don't really see my department. It's not through one of like actually wanting to make friendships with them. It's just because I don't see them. So I have got excellent relationships with my pastoral team. And for me, that's made it like amazing at my current school, those relationships. And I absolutely love it there because of that. That is one of my main reasons. And yeah, so I think, that was a really, really tough time. But during that time, so Dan kind of started looking for a job. I think it was about a couple of years after you'd been there.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to move school again very quickly, but I was obviously very conscious about the kind of way that looks in terms of when people going through selection processes. You know, I'm always looking for the reason why someone's going to put my CV to one side rather than the reasons that I've got on there that they're going to say we're interested in having a look at this guy. The
school was quite far away from our house, and we were having our first baby when you ended up leaving there, and so it really didn't look like you were leaving that school because of the workplace, like politics and stuff like that. It was more... optic wise, it looked like you were leaving because you were having a child and you wanted to be close to home, but And which was part of the reason as well.
I mean, at that stage, I'd say I'd broken the back of the worst of that school. I still wouldn't say I enjoyed it. That would be a stretch. But in terms of, if we think about the circumstances that were around it and stuff, I'd say the biggest obstacles were no longer going to be a problem.
Yeah.
But there was still a lot of optics.
Do you mind me saying why? One of the reasons why?
No, of course not.
So one of the main reasons was Dan's head of department was, she ended up getting sacked for being homophobic. It was homophobia, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
At a school where we had a co-head teachership, one of whom was lesbian.
It was a really a rough time. But you got you did end up staying there a couple of years in the end, and when you came into your new school, I think you found a little bit of that what you'd lost in that first school.
I don't think
not the same. It will never be the same. And it will never be the same.
And that's something that I was explaining this member of staff on the D&V. Like where I'm at now, I'm really lucky that we've had a couple of people move on in the department, but everyone who I've had in the department have been really nice people. There's so many nice staff around the school.
But maybe that's because you were head of department. So when he moved to this school that he's currently at, where he's leaving this year, so I'm sure it's very bittersweet to Sulco out for him because he's been there for a very long time. You got a head of department role, and so in a way, I guess you got to, not initially, but you got to dictate, who you hired within the department little bit. Because some of your department are middle leaders, you didn't always get the kind of first choice.
It was actually quite interesting because I don't know if you remember, but they pretty much cleared the decks with the PE department when I first joined.
Wasn't it?
There was only one member of the department who'd been there the previous year who stayed, and she had just done what was then her NQT year.
Yeah.
So she was going to be a +1 at the start of the next year, and she was the most experienced in the department in that school because there was 3 of us coming in from new. And
she'd had a really hard time, hadn't she?
She'd had a torrid run of it.
So when you came, I think she was a bit like, oh God, don't know, I hope he's, I hope he's
she
kind
was
of
a little
different.
Standoffish to start with, and based on everything that I since learned, I can fully understand why she was, but I think when she realised, this isn't going to be the same kind of deal, she kind of warmed up. But I felt really bad for her because obviously, in terms of school logistics, bits that, again, like you, I'm at a split site school.
Random that we're both at split site schools at the moment because
which at the time had a split break and split lunch.
We don't have split break or split lunch though.
Oh, we don't have split break anymore. That's new, tail end of last year, beginning of this year.
We don't split anything like that, which is really strange.
No, anyway, but you've got much more space than we do.
For another day.
But all those kind of moving parts and logistics, coupled with the fact, again, PE is quite unique as a subject because more often than not, it's going to be taught gender specific, and the school I'm at isn't a fairly even split. It is very, very male heavy. So we was leaning on this member of staff so much because she knew kind of the inner workings of space, logistics, and I just felt bad for her. She'd had a rough run. She's been in the career 5 minutes, and now she's got these people told coming, these guys are really experienced, they'll look after you. And it's like, sorry, can I borrow you for a minute? Can you tell me this? Can you tell me that? But
and actually,
it worked out.
She was really lovely, and she ended up leaving teaching. I think she does want to go back into it eventually, but there were some family issues that she needed to leave for. So it wasn't actually to do with the teaching side of things, because we done a podcast on teacher retention a couple of weeks ago. So it wasn't to do with the fact that she hated the school or the teaching element or anything like that. But yeah, I think then was it 2 years ago you got the cultural capital TLR side of things?
No. It kind of was the education beyond the classroom and all of that led into it. I think I've been doing that for 4 years now. 4 years.
So Dan has got many strings to his bow in teaching, as you kind of do when you've been in teaching for a really long time. So I feel like I'm nearly 15 years, you're 20 years. And I feel like when you've had that, really, you almost end up in different roles. And so you've done the pastoral, you've obviously done the head of department side of things. and you've done a bit of behaviour. You've done literacy. He was like literacy.
A PE teacher doing literacy, there's a rarity.
Well, specifically reading.
Yeah.
To bring up kids' reading ages, which you're really successful in. And then you got the education beyond the school day, which essentially was cultural capital and promoting cultural capital in the school, but also alongside all the kind of clubs and stuff like that.
And the off-timetable.
Yeah, which all feeds into the same kind of area. And then last year, because you've only been associate for 1 year.
Yeah.
Last year you went for the associate assistant head role, and then you kind of naturally progressed, obviously, into then getting this assistant head role in September, which is amazing. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And what is your assistant head role going to be in September? Obviously, I know, guys, I'm just asking for the podcast.
I mean, it's not actually set in stone at this point, but based on what I presented at my interview and talked, I think it's still going to be very cultural capital heavy, as well as overseeing the open bucket subjects.
Yeah, go on. Do you want to tell us what open bucket is? Because I think you even had to tell me this, so I was not 100% sure what was included.
Well, the open bucket is going to be what goes to make the Attainment 8 and Progress 8 measures beyond the subjects that have to be there.
English, maths and science.
Right, so English, maths, science aren't going to be part of my remit because they'll come under literacy numeracy. You're then going to have the EBAC subjects.
Okay, geography, history,
so they'll have
MFL.
Someone directing those.
Right.
Languages.
Yeah, MFL, I said.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. But then it's basically, and the rest.
Yeah, so like the art,
DT, technology, music,
PE,
drama,
obviously.
food, PE.
Yeah. So, so Dan, do you think you end up teaching some of those?
I hope for those kids' sake I don't end up teaching art. You do not want me teaching art, and you've tasted my cooking. You do not want me in food.
Yeah, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be the food tech teacher, Dan. I don't know about that. Actually, I remember. Do you remember that time that I made you draw something that Evie was on one of our?
That was actually the best drawing I've ever done. That was only a few weeks ago.
So one of our daughters asked him to draw something, or asked us to both draw something.
It was a sloth, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a sloth. Of course, it was a sloth. And Dan was like, "Oh, I don't." And I said, "No. We're both teachers. We can't tell her that we can't try. We always try and encourage our children."
I'm forever telling them, "Look, you've just got to do your best." So
I said to him, "No, you've got to just do your best."
Time.
Anyway, he done it. I actually took a picture of it. I think.
Have you?
Yeah. I've got it on my phone.
I was actually super proud that is the best drawing I ever did. Honestly, the skills have come to me late in life.
Or anything.
No, but anyway. The tongue was poking out the corner of the mouth. The concentration was there.
Yeah, it's true. But yeah, so I think oh God, we've gone on a whistle-stop tour of your teaching career. But I actually think it's really interesting just to see kind of the different routes, because so many people take so many. What you were saying, some people go straight up the ranks. Yeah. Within 5-6 years, they're already assistant head, deputy, whatever else. Me and you have definitely taken a much more scenic, slower route. I mean, I'm not an assistant head yet, but fingers crossed at some point in the next couple of years, one of my aims. And obviously I did have some babies in the middle there and maternity leaves. Oh, and COVID as well. So, we can't really blame ourselves for that. But I think, it is worth saying that everybody's route is different, and, it doesn't mean that it's any less worthy. Okay, so you made it to that point and it took 20 years, but it doesn't mean that you are any less worthy than somebody that got there in 6 years or whatever else.
No, I mean, in some ways, you've got to respect those people who go straight, because if they've shown the aptitude and skill to go there, they've clearly got some kind of theoretical knowledge that's impressing in interviews. And with the way that education's now so research-based, you need people who do have that savvy to kind of implement these ideas. But at the same time, you do want that mix of people who've been there long enough and seen a bit of everything. Yeah. Because those ones who you said are going a straight line, they tend to have a very narrowed view because they've not worked long enough and picked up these
extra... the experience though, isn't it?
It's picking up those extra bows, like you said. I'm lucky that I've delved into literacy a bit. I've done a bit on culture capital. I've done a bit on behaviour.
Because actually, when you're assistant head, they can change your remit. So, like, let's
a
say,
lot of schools do.
for example, in a couple of years, they say to you, well, actually, we now want you to lead on Key Stage 3 or Key Stage 4. Like, you've got experience in those areas because of when you've done those other, like, things. So, you know, I think it is useful to have, and I would never say that that experience is irrelevant, like absolutely relevant. But anyway, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Let's see if you can think of something. So usually at the end of our podcast, we do a get in the bin. So I think because I'm putting you on the spot, and I didn't ask you to think of this beforehand, can you think of something in teaching, can be anything, that you would want to throw away?
I can think of lots of things I'd like to throw away, yeah.
Well, yeah, okay, but you can only talk about one. So what would be the ultimate thing you'd be like, right, got to just throw it away? And if you can think of something, what would you replace it with? Or what would you put in to kind of go for the win, as Jenny calls it? Oh, because Jenny's not here today. So I said, go in the bin, go for the win, done.
I'm actually going to expand on one of Jenny's from a few weeks ago.
All right, go on then.
Just proof that I listened to the show as well. I know Jenny spoke about one size fits all CPD.
Oh, yeah, she did.
But whether it's one size fits all because that seems to be a model schools use, or whether it was personalised like you guys said, which I think is a great idea. My biggest bugbear when I'm in CPD is the amount of research that we use to inform our lesson and teaching about you shouldn't just sit them down and talk at them for an hour. And what happens on CPD?
Oh, so like basically not taking their own advice.
Well, if we're saying all the scientific research says the best way that people learn is by X, Y, and Z, why are we not applying that when we're trying to upskill our staff, who are the ones who are responsible for that education?
So your go for the win would be actually use those same techniques and strategies
in your CPD, yeah.
In your CPD, yeah. I mean, I've spoken about this before many times. The best CPDs that I've ever had are ones that are, first of all, catering to the different like levels of staff. Someone that's been in the profession 20 years compared to someone that's been in the profession 1 year or 5 years, you know, because there is a big difference in like what spectrum, you know, and you know.
Much different need.
But yeah, you're right. Absolutely. If it's not engaging and we are literally sitting there listening to somebody speaking, you know, you're right. If kids learn in that way where it's got to be active and adaptive, you know, like the new like kind of buzzword in teaching at the moment, then it should absolutely be the same for our CPD because we are still learners. And actually we had a podcast on that just a week ago about being a learner and a teacher at the same time, which Dan has always also completed his MPQSL and still loves reading up on like research and stuff like that. Can you think off the top of your head what's your favourite?
I say the book that's probably closest to my brain right now is The Teacher and the Teenage Brain by John Coleman.
Oh, yeah.
That was really insightful, and as someone who's got a big biology base from my degree and stuff, it was really fascinating.
Do you know what you told me? If you like think, you know, you just kind of told me like a little synopsis from it, and it was really, really interesting. And actually, the thing that you spoke about with me was like the prefrontal cortex of the brain, and how in a teenage brain it's not actually developed, and that's the response. It's the one where they get angry really quickly.
No, the anger comes from the middle brain. That bit's developed, so that's why we see these big emotions from teenagers.
No, but what's the
prefrontal cortex? The front decision making, processing, problem solving, rational thinking.
Yeah, so that's why. I'm head of year 10, and actually a lot of the kids I've actually explained to them, listen, you know, sometimes when you're making these like off the cuff decisions and they're not the right decisions and whatever else, you know, your brain is not fully developed yet, and it is about us as adults kind of understanding and trying to de-escalate, you know, especially in those kind of situations where it's like a bad decision that then causes kind of some kind of escalation of behaviour. So that was really interesting and really, really informed my way of thinking about the teenagers in my year group.
And I actually was really happy. I'm running like a behaviour intervention thing at the moment at my school. And one of the students who did that, I did this from at the tail end of last school year. There's been such a massive drop off on his behaviour points that they decided, look, we want to run this programme again. which, I thought I'd got rid of. It's quite hard to fit in across the two-site school, whatever. But I don't teach him this year. Just happened to bump into him just after they got up, and I said, "Oh, I see you're doing really well this year. What's going on?" He was like, "Sir, what are you saying to me when you kept saying the front of my brain's my baby brain and told me to count to 10? I started taking that on, and I don't get in anywhere near as much trouble. Now, don't get me wrong, he's not a perfect student at this point. He still gets behaviour points for silliness.
What is a perfect student?
But considering that he's now in year 9, where you think the points would start creeping up for those ones who were like one of our highest behaviour point.
Year 9, the hormonal year.
Yeah. But say from year 8, where he was one of the highest achievers of behaviour points, the highest offenders of behaviour points, whatever way you want to look at it, to now not being anywhere near that point shows real progress, because there is that science there.
But that just goes to show the practical side of kind of talking about it to this child, like him going through why this is happening and really engaging him in that active kind of learning of why is the best way. So I agree, CPD also needs to reflect that too. Thank you so much for being on our podcast today.
Interesting.
And this is season 2, episode 6. So join us next week, where we're going to be talking about mine and Jenny's route into teaching and what we done in terms of Jenny done her Teach First. Jenny done it through Teach First, and I done it through doing a PGCE. So we've got to think back a long time here, but we're going to talk about our reflections on that and being like a new teacher and what we kind of experienced in that time. So thanks for joining and listening for this week's and next week's podcast. We appreciate it, and please reply to us on all our socials if you feel. All right, bye. You say bye?
Oh, bye.